Welcome to the Upshot, Multi-World Disc Golf podcast about the latest in the disc golf world. I'm the publisher, Charlie Eisenhood. Joining me is Josh Mansfield on this Tuesday, September 26th, following the U.S. Women's Disc Golf Championships. Before we talk U.S. Women's, and we've got a lot to talk about, I'm living in purgatory, Josh. I don't know who I am. I don't know where I am. I am here, and for today, this is what we've got. The pink-green combo.
Oh my gosh. People, we're going to lose YouTube views because they're going to log in, look at our color scheme and go, nope, I'm out.
So yes, I've officially moved.
Congratulations.
But I have officially not begun my new life yet in this new apartment. How was your weekend?
It was good. So here's a good story for you. I went disc golfing. Just to the 9-hole course. It's a few minutes away from my house. And we had a couple behind us who were just cruising. So we let them play through. And they come up to the tee pad. And I'm like, hey, did you play for the Salt Lake Shred? Because he's got a Shred jersey on, which is the AUDL Ultimate Team. And he's like, he almost falls over. He said, how do you know who the Shred are? What's going on here?
Okay, hang on a second. Just as a quick aside, why would he be so shocked that somebody with a Frisbee in their hand would be shocked, would be somehow know about the Frisbee team? Anyway, continue.
That man looked like he was shaken to his core that I knew what the Shred were. And I said, and he's like, how do you know who the Shred are? I said, well, I watched the championship weekend. I watched you guys beat Minnesota in that crazy semifinals game. And he just was so baffled that I think I'm the first person out in the world who has ever talked to him about AUDL.
Who was it? Do you know who it was?
I don't know who it was.
Maybe since they're a disc golfer, maybe they listen to the Upshot and they will stumble across this, or someone from the Salt Lake Ultimate community will stumble across this and we will find out who it was. I love that.
It was fun. It was a lot of fun, though. It made me, I like that I knew what I was talking about.
It goes to show you where the two sports are in terms of fandom. Dude is straight up scared of you. Who is this person talking to me? If Macbeth walked down the streets of a metro in the South U.S., right?
Okay.
Like Houston,
Sure.
Charlotte, many cities. I'm just excluding Northeast.
Yeah.
People would recognize him I think regularly. I'm not saying it would be like Taylor Swift walking down the street, but people would be like, "Oh, are you Paul Macbeth?" People would know who he was. If he was outside for an hour, he would get recognized multiple times. That just simply does not happen for Ultimate Frisbee players. It's not a thing. Anyway, good stuff.
Yeah, fun.
You know who else might get recognized out on the streets, at least a little bit, is Kristin Tattar, who has done it, Josh. She has completed the Grand Slam season, sweeping the majors. And as we kind of expected, this was not an easy, gimme tournament for her. It was not like what we saw at Champions Cup or Worlds or the European Open, where she largely opened up a lead and then just held on or destroyed everybody. She was behind at multiple points. It was not any kind of smooth sailing for Tattar. And at the end of the day, though, she found a way to win. And that's been something that she has been better at than a lot of other players as well. It's not just when she's on her absolute A game that she wins. She can beat you with maybe a B game. And that's what had to happen this weekend. Whatever, the ratings, who cares? The thing that I was impressed by is that she was able to grind through not being sharp off the tee. I mean, she was 7 strokes worse than Evelina tee to green this weekend. 6 strokes worse than Henna. And it's a tough course, so don't get me wrong. But in that final round, the ability to scramble out of trouble was displayed as yet another thing that she is so capable of. And it's why she's walking away with a 4th straight major this season, 5 total in a row. That's a record. And now the major sweep.
The other part that I want to highlight, you mentioned that she doesn't do it as well from the green. She scrambles well, but the weakness that we'd identified in previous weeks that we thought might be the reason she doesn't win this major was her putting. Best putter in the tournament. She outputted Owen Scoggins. I mean, that is an impressive performance and just demonstrates the depth of her game. And if something's off one week, she's able to make up for it in another aspect of her game. That is the completeness of Kristin Tattar and what's required in order to win the majors. One other thing you highlight, Charlie, you said, don't worry about the major. Well, or the rating, excuse me. Worry a lot about the major. Don't worry about the rating. She comes in at 993 rated for the event. The last the last person to have a rating better than 993 at a major was Paige Pierce back in 2021.
Wow. Other than Kristin.
Other than Kristin, right?
So, as a winner, though.
As a winner, that's true. That is true. As
Missy
a winner.
just did it at Worlds.
But still, I mean, that is... in the past 2 years, that still would be like higher than her 1,000.
Sure.
I mean, you've got her 1,000 rate ones. That's the highest.
It's compressed ratings because of the wooded nature of the course and minimal
and
OB.
the weather and yeah, exactly.
Obviously, there is this sort of fun side story of will she get to 1,000? This is not going to help.
No, unfortunately not.
But I think it's a matter of time. I think it's just a matter of time, and it may not happen next month or even this year. But I think there's a very good chance it will happen next year because she's clearly showed the ability to string together 10-10 plus golf for weeks at a time. And look, we've talked a lot about the ins and outs of this tournament and the rounds in our Rapid React show Inside the Circle, which we did on Sunday night. We would suggest and encourage you to get yourself a subscription so that you can listen to that. We're going to focus today a little bit more on kind of a bigger story, which is where does this season rank all time? I mean, we talked about, if she sweeps the season, we said this like 3 weeks ago, she sweeps the season from here on out, it's done. Like it'll be the best season of all time. Now it hasn't happened, right? She lost MVP Open, but here she wins at the major. So she has won all of the majors in a season. That's the first time that's ever happened in a season with at least 3 majors. So that alone is going to put this up into the stratosphere of great seasons. And it's funny, Josh, because almost exactly 1 year ago, we had a very similar conversation. What are the best FPO seasons of all time, and where does this one rank? We were talking about the 2022 season, which was an amazing season. But I think it's fair to say that because of her success at the majors this year and just all-around level of complete dominance, that this is elevated above 2022 already. And so the question becomes, where does this stack in the Mount Rushmore of seasons? Is this number one all time? And so I guess the question is, what else is even in the conversation?
Like you said, we went back and pulled a couple of those seasons. The first one that comes to mind is Juliana Korver's 2001 season. This is, and we recognize, a very different era than what it was when Juliana was playing back in 2001. But in 2001, Juliana won the only major that was available, the single sweep. She also won every event that she entered in FPO except D-Glow, where she took second. That is it. Granted, you want to see a little different time. She played in, it doesn't give me a total, a lot, like probably 35 or more events, and she had a total earnings of about $12,000.
Yes, different times.
Very different times, but that level of consistency is a very, very impressive level, and regardless of the field strength, to never lose, that definitely has to qualify as one of the greatest seasons of all time.
It's hard to compare it in some ways because this was not only was there only one major, the national tour didn't exist yet.
Correct.
There was no Elite Series. Now, I mean, there were tournaments that had a higher level to them that eventually would become tournaments that were on the national tour. So you have tournaments that still exist today. Like scrolling through Kansas City Wide Open, D-Glow, literally was still called the Discraft Great Lakes Open, the Brent Hambrick Memorial Open, which was an NT for many years. Obviously, we had Worlds. That was the big one. Like the Mad City Open, I think, still takes place. Mm-hmm. It's not a tour event, but
SoCal
the Veterans Park Open, that was a big one for a while there. So, it was an incredibly impressive season. It's just that it's like such a different era that it's hard to draw direct comparison. But that is why, and I agree with you. I think that's number one on the list. With like, if I had to pick a season excluding Tattar right now, I would pick that one. Now, 2017 Paige Pierce for me is also right there, as is 2008 Valerie Jenkins. 2017 Paige Pierce, she won all three majors she entered. Now, granted, one of them was kind of cupcake Aussie Open. There was like nobody there because it was in Australia. She did not play in the European Open that year, but dominant season, totally dominant season. Like she won almost every single important tournament that year. She only didn't win Ed Hedrick Hall of Fame at WR Jackson. She got fourth. Pittsburgh Flying Disc Open, an NT, she got second. Ledgestone, she was fourth. Utah Open, which was a B tier that year on the Pro Tour, fifth. And then Nick Hyde Memorial third. But I literally won everything else. It was an incredible season. But I have to say, Josh, and just to give Valerie Jenkins her due, 2008, she won 4 of 5 majors. That was probably her peak year. The thing is, because of the quality of the competition right now, because of the level at which Kristin has won way above the rest of the field, in many cases, 10 plus strokes ahead of players at the majors. To me, this is now cemented as number one all time. And I guess I have to say, I wasn't sure I would feel that way even like a couple weeks ago. But like when you really look at it in context and you think about actually sweeping 4 majors and battling against the best players that this division has ever seen. Mm-hmm. Now, look, you can have some caveats as with any of these things. Paige is hurt. But like, where's Paige beating Kristin? I just don't see it. I don't think we saw the form from Paige for her to beat Tattar at Worlds. I definitely don't think Paige would have beaten her this weekend at US Women's. So this to me is number one all time. And it's hard to draw a comparison with Korver from 20 plus years ago, but it's just the strength of competition is in a different world. We're talking about back then, there's like 6, 7, 8 players in the field. Tattar is going up against 90 players.
The other thing that you have to add in, right, when you look at Kristin Tattar and her performance at the majors, and you were highlighting this, her past 4 of her past 5 majors go in some of the highest rated major wins of all time. And Paige has only shot 1 tournament in the past since 2021, June of 2021. Paige has only broken the 1,000 rated mark for an event rating once. And that was at OTB this year. And that's the tournament she won this year. That to me is what highlights why the caveat of Paige not being there is so correct, right? You talk about the form, you talk about kind of like the narrative, but you just look at the ratings, and the ratings tell us a story that Paige just has been playing well enough to match Kristin's level. And maybe she would have popped off at European Open and had an excellent tournament, but just didn't feel like it. And the other part that you highlight when you look at Paige's season, for example, back in 2017, you're right that was a spectacular season. But think about the tournaments that you listed that, she didn't win. There's a lot of ones on that schedule, which also I think is a little overwhelming. But the wins you list, like there are a good number of important tournaments on that list that she did not win, which is why it kind of feels comparable to me to Kristin's season this year, right? The difference is Kristin only has important tournaments on her schedule this year, and she won more than half of them. I mean, you can go through and do the season comparison stats between her and the field and come up with like a competitive number for player of the year, right? If Kristin or the field had to win player of the year, it's a close race. And that to me in this era of the high level of performance highlights enough just how spectacular Kristin has been. The majors and the ability, because what's also important to me, and maybe this is a little bit maybe it's a little bit counterintuitive, but the fact that she struggled in this last major actually I think bolsters her narrative, not the opposite. Because this time there were people who were challenging her. You have Own, who's shooting an incredible final round. Hannah, who almost has the lead going into the final round before a really bad hole 18, right? Like there are things around this tournament that show Kristin's resilience, and that is an important of an aspect as dominance is as well. Because as you talked about, like with JK, for example, back in 2001, she was on a whole nother plane compared to the people she was playing with. Less people, of course, but I think it also helps cement in the future if we have another amazing, spectacular season and another Kristin-esque season. The fact that she was still close to her competitors, but just managed to elevate her playing to a level and her floor to a level that other players couldn't even touch. This season truly is going to be something to remember.
Two final things I'll say. One is, it's actually not that close a race, Field versus Tattar for Player of the Year.
Oh, no.
Because Tattar swept the majors, Josh.
That's true. You're right.
I mean, like, like if you just look at the Pro Tour events, sure, I'll give you that. And I mean, I think that the critique of this season for Tattar is that, like, she let a couple slip away, but, she only hasn't won 5 Elite Series events. Okay, so she's won all of the other ones. To me, that's, like, incredible at this stage of disc golf's, growth. The other thing I'll say is it's not irrelevant that she became the highest rated player of all time in the middle of this season.
Yeah.
Now, if it was 1,000, it would really just have that je ne sais quoi that you want for like everything to kind of just line up perfectly. It didn't happen, but I think it gives us something to look forward to in the future. But yeah, wow. I mean, regardless, it's an incredible achievement that needs to be just given its due, as it's not just that she's great week in and week out. It's that she's able to elevate her game for the biggest tournaments, and having that level of mental strength to power through when she's not playing well, to me, speaks a lot about why she's such a great champion. And when you listen to her interviews after these rounds, after these wins, you hear from a player who has a level of poise and, internal reflection that I think is rare in athletes, to be honest. And I don't just mean in disc golf. I think we're witnessing a level of greatness right now that is rarely seen. Like you have these things happen in other sports, but a lot of times it's the two players, right? It's the Nadal versus Federer. It's the Djokovic versus Nadal versus Federer, right? And one of those players emerges as the best, perhaps, but there's still a foil. Kristin has no foil.
Yep.
we were talking earlier this season about I was challenger by committee, and somebody in the Discord this past weekend said that the committee's been disbanded. And it speaks to just how impressive it's been.
Let me give you one more stat. Kristin Tattar is the first player this season to break the $100,000 mark. Your top MPO earners, Calvin Heimberg and Isaac Robinson, are both at $88,000.
And that's what happens when you win all the time.
And those are in payouts that are significantly less.
It's a good point.
Significantly less, right? Like Worlds, she earned half of what Isaac Robinson earned.
Right.
First person to break 100,000 this season.
She's definitely going to set a new FPO record for earnings. The question is, will she set the all-time record?
She might. What's Ricky's? It was Ricky 2 years ago, I think?
No, it was last year.
Was it last year? Okay.
It was really close between Kristin and Ricky, and I think he only beat out Kristin by a couple $1,000, if I recall correctly. I mean, we can look it up.
I'll pull Ricky's earnings last year.
Of course, they both won the Tour Championship, which is a big part of getting to that great number. But I don't even think there's anybody else who could possibly catch Kristin in FPO, even if she didn't play the Tour Championship.
No, I don't think so. So Ricky said it last season?
I think so, yeah. Because I remember Kristin said it, and then like 3 hours later, Ricky broke it.
Ricky broke it. That record is $105,776.
I mean, there's no question Kristin's going over that number. The question is, will another player surpass her? But is Calvin and Isaac are the highest right now at 88?
Calvin and Isaac, I think so. I mean, I pulled the top two from the Pro Tour standings. I don't know who else it would be.
To some extent, it will depend on what the payouts are for the Pro Tour Championship.
Yep.
What the differential is between Throw Pink and USDGC, which could be a wide margin potentially.
Correct.
And then, of course, how well Kristin plays at the Tour Championships specifically. But remember, the format has changed this year. Kristin starts the tournament with a lead. Good luck, everybody. Good luck. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back.
At Pound, the quality of our gear runs deeper than the stitching. That's why we make everything right here in the U.S., employing highly skilled, well-paid professionals. From bomb-proof Cordura fabric to YKK zippers and recycled plastics, we source the highest quality U.S. materials to make the most comfortable, durable pack in disc golf. Our lifetime warranty stays with the pack, not the purchaser. So regardless of how you find us, we will be here to make sure your pack stays on the course and out of the landfill. Pound's integrity is held together with more than just thread.
Welcome back to the Upshot. Josh, this was a good course, the Regulator. Hard, wooded, varied, a little raw, but challenged the players appropriately. I won the over-under. Came in, final winning score, 18 under par, just a couple strokes under the number. But I think the thing that I was most impressed by, Josh, the PDGA deserves credit for running an excellent U.S. Women's Disc Golf Championship for the first time in what feels like I can remember. Like, this tournament was plagued with complaints in the past. Mm-hmm. And there's been too many courses, and it's been kind of mismanaged, and I'm sure there's still things that need to be improved, but I have to say it felt like this had the gravity of a major, that it was treated appropriately. And I have a friend who was on the ground who said it was very well run, that it was great.
Last year we were talking about how US women's needed to just be the celebration of women's disc golf, and Throw Pink should become the major. And I still think Throw Pink should be a major, but this tournament felt closest to a major that it has ever felt, in my opinion. And it was funny because after we finished this week, I was like, okay, are we going to be talking about that again? And I didn't feel this compelling need to just talk about how this should not be a major, because it was executed well. It really felt like there were things that went off without a hitch. The course was a well-picked course, and I was good with the 4 rounds on it. It felt like a major course, and I mean, you highlighted all those things, and I think it went really, really well. And it's even with like bad weather, which can sometimes throw wrinkles in delays or course conditions. Like it really did. It felt like it ran from the viewer side, right? And I know you had the friend on the ground, but I did not. And I just from my observations and watching of social media, and as somebody who follows disc golf probably closer than a lot of people, I saw no negative feedback anywhere, except for not great caddy books, but that's okay. That feels excusable given how well everything else went. And I know we typically do it at the end, Charlie, but I think we should highlight the purse watch real quick as part of this discussion.
Well, let's do it. Let's pop into the purse watch. This year's purse, $100,004. Unsurprisingly, that is a new high by quite a margin. That is 78% higher than last year's purse of $56,145. I mean, for a single division payout, that is amazing.
Stellar, exceptional. Like words, there aren't enough words and acronyms to give how great that purse is. To break the 100K mark with just the single division is such an impressive feat.
And yet, Kristin Tattar has still earned more this season than the entire U.S. women's payout. I don't mean that as a criticism, but yeah, I mean it's incredible. Like you look at the FPO payouts from the other majors: Champions Cup 43,000, European Open 25,000, Worlds 75,000, U.S. Women's 100,000.
Yeah,
that's awesome. Now, of course, the field size is close to double these other events.
It's massive.
I mean, I didn't pull up each of them, but I mean, it's a much bigger field. And I'm not even talking about the like AM side, just the FPO side. This is the biggest FPO event of the season. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's awesome. And I have to imagine that the PGA is really sweetening the pot, and good for them. Good for them.
In terms of winners payout, Kristin took some $11,000. The only tournaments that beat that out: Worlds pays out $15,000, MVP paid out $13,000, and then Des Moines paid out $12,250 because of that additional sponsorship. Only 3 tournaments this year that beat it out. Every other Worlds is the only major that does not beat U.S. Women's for winners payout.
Kristin, thanks you all for sweetening these winner payouts. So I wanted to just dig into some other little statistical notes. I think there are a few interesting things going on. Speaking to Kristin Tattar's resiliency, she actually lost her streak of leading at majors. She had an 18-round streak of leading the field at majors after each round, dating back to last year's Worlds. That was snapped. She was actually on the 3rd card after round 1. She was kind of struggling out there. And she ended up just 2 rounds short of the all-time record set by Juliana Korver in 99 and 2000, 20 rounds in a row leading at the majors. So her record is safe, maybe forever. Although we shouldn't assume anything. No one saw Kristin Tattar rising to this level of dominance in the way that she has. Tattar misses the lead card at a major for the first time since 2021 Worlds. So, even when she was not leading, she was usually within a stroke or two, and she had a tough first round. She had tough stretches throughout the entire tournament, taking double bogeys, and just managed to fight back and get enough birdies.
That the other part that we need to highlight here, birdie percentage actually is there's a lot of parity between her and the other top 4 competitors. Thanks to Kristin playing a really strong rounds 2 through 4. Kristin finishes at 35%, Owen at 35%, Hannah at 32%, Haley at 36%. The difference is that Kristin took the least amount of bogeys, or worse, right? So, Kristin, for example, she only had 10% that were bogey or worse. And that comes in as the lowest among those 4, who all were very comparable in terms of birdie percentages. And in the case of Haley, above, Owen, for example, is at 14%. Hannah, she's at 14%. and Haley's was the most egregious. She comes in at 18%, but that's including 4% double bogeys and 1%, so one triple bogey. So it was really Kristin's ability to avoid taking the big numbers that propelled her forward, and that's what makes the big difference, and that's reflected in, you know, as you've mentioned in the previous segment, scramble percentage of 71%, highest in the field, circle 1%,
and that even doesn't even account for some of the absolutely insane scrambles that she had, like hole 2, just remarkable. Like in the final round, it's looking like double bogeyville, and then she like somehow laces a tiny gap to get within the circle. Like, wow. So yeah, I mean, she had to clutch up and make some huge shots. And I mean, she even said in her post round comments, like, I was kind of not controlling the disc off the tee, and I just told myself, all right, this is where I am on the course. I have to make the best of the spot that I'm in. And I think her ability to compartmentalize and not let that spiral happen. You watch players all the time, and maybe can relate to it ourselves. You make an error and then you compound the error. And I think Tattar does an amazing job of not compounding the error.
Yeah, I think that is a remarkable skill. So here's something that I thought was interesting, Charlie. I'm going to give you the four for your top 4. I'm going to give you what their OB numbers were. And I want you to guess who you think each number belongs to. So we had 2 OB strokes, 4 OB strokes, 5 OB strokes, and 5 OB strokes. Your options: Kristin, Owen, Hannah, or Haley King.
2, 4, 5, 5.
Yep.
I'm going to say lowest OB strokes goes to Hannah.
It does go to Hannah.
Yes.
That's what was really remarkable to me, because often you'll see with like Hannah and Evelina, for example, paired with Holland and Ella, that they'll have incredible strokes gained tee to green, but they'll also have some of the highest OB numbers. Hannah had some of the lowest OB numbers of the entire field. Valerie Mondahano's next at 2, and then Stacy Ronsley and Lucky Lorenzen both are as low or lower. But just remarkable how good Hannah was off the tee.
Yeah, I mean, she dominated. She was 7 strokes better, I think, than Kristin, tee to green. The problem was the putting, of course.
Yeah.
Just really, really bad. I mean, there's just no way around it. I mean, I was saying to you before the show, Josh, that when Hannah hits a circle 2 putt, it feels like a shocking occurrence. And she's one of the bottom players on tour in circle 2 putting at 5%.
Yeah.
This weekend, just to give you some numbers, Hannah was slightly negative strokes gained putting compared to Kristin being 13.5 above the average. With Hannah's numbers on the putting green, 65 and 0. It's just, you know, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but it's very obvious that if she doesn't improve the putting, she's going to end up where she is. And here is the stat to go along with that, Josh. Hannah Blomroos has the most major podium finishes without a win in the FPO field.
Wow.
It's 6 podium finishes without a win. And it's basically entirely because of the putting.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. It is because of her putting. And, you know, you mentioned something else to me before we started recording. You know, there's only one person that beat Evelina in strokes gained tee to green. Or excuse me, Hannah. It's Evelina who comes in at 31.39 strokes gained. But the difference is that Evelina, it feels like Evelina is making progression in, and you highlighted this when we talked about it a couple weeks ago, like her form is starting to look better. And when she gets on her putting streaks, it feels like it's because you can see the change and development in her form. I remember, and I highlighted this in our Rapid Reacts at Maple Hill, hole 8, she's putting back downhill. And I'm like, oh my gosh, she's going to airball this. It's going to go in the water. And she putted powerfully. Her legs were engaged and put it square in the center of the chains. And it was impressive to me because when Evelina gets in her own head, she stops doing those things and just goes to the kind of wrist pop that goes anywhere.
Just like spray and pray, like just like I'm gonna lob it up there and hope it happens.
The difference though is it feels like even when Hannah's putting okay or sort of well, it still doesn't look like it's a sustainable or repeatable motion, right?
It's awful.
It is. And Evelina's starting to she's still got the mental struggle. She's still got to overcome that. Yeah. Her putting was worse than Henna's, but it feels like there's progress there. Henna just feels stuck.
Well, but I mean, you said it's worse than Henna's. The thing that's different is that Evelina's starting to look like an elite Circle 2 putter again. I mean, she was 16% this weekend. That's an amazing number in FPO, one of the top on the weekend. And she's picking up strokes with the Circle 2 putting. The problem is the Circle 1 putting. I think I looked in round 2, maybe. She had like 6 Circle 1 birdie looks and missed them all.
Yeah.
And it's just like, you can't win if you don't make those putts at least half the time. And she makes them way less than half the time. And that's really the problem. So I don't know. Nothing new here. Nothing new. Sure. But impressive performance from the Europeans once again. Kristin first, Henna third, Evelina tied for fourth. Another nice weekend for Owen Scoggins, who, putted great per usual, and just kind of had a couple too many errors. We talked about this in the Rapid Reacts. Just like does everything except putting a little bit worse than Kristin, and it kind of like accumulates over the course of an event. And her ability to continue to compete with the power disadvantage that she has it's an amazing thing to watch.
It is. Well, and it was funny because I went back and was looking. If you just take her strokes gained tee to green, strokes gained putting, OB, you compare those differences. Kristin is half a stroke better tee to green. She was 1.5 strokes better gained putting, and she was 1 OB stroke ahead of Owen.
It's very, very close.
That's 3 strokes.
Yeah,
and that literally adds up to 3 strokes, and that is the margin of a difference, right? I mean,
it should in theory add up to 3 strokes.
It should, but this time I think it's easy to see because of just how close they all are. It's not like
and you mentioned it earlier. Credit to Kristin, who just putted awesome this weekend.
Right.
Thanks again to Statmando for all their work pulling stats and making these conversations more interesting. The U.S. Estonian ambassador shouted out Kristin over on, I guess, Twitter. X, sorry.
Come on, Charlie.
I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce the Estonian here, but congratulations to Kristin Tattar for winning the Women's Disc Golf Championship this weekend and completing a 2023 Grand Slam of Majors. That's from Ambassador George P. Kent. Pretty cool.
Yeah.
I mean, I think Kristin's legitimately like becoming a celebrity in Estonia.
Oh, yeah. I mean, she gets recognized. She's met with the prime minister.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely the case. She, and we talked about this, like her and Silva Lott are like on Nike ads at bus stops.
Yeah, it's pretty sick.
She's a legit athlete over there. It's really cool.
Okay, so before we go, we want to shout out the winners of all of the divisions at the U.S. Women's Championship, because this is a monstrous event with every division possible offered. So let's run it down. Here we go. And we have some notes. I'm going to run the whole list down, and then we can come back and talk about some notes. Jen Allen wins in FP40. Des Redding played amazing to win FP50, beat Juliana Korver, beat her score in every round. So shout out to Des.
Strokes.
Amy Cooper wins FP55. Pam Renicky, Pamaflage wins FP60. Donna Greast wins FP65. Sylvia Vokes wins FP75. Virginia Polkinghorn wins FA1 in a playoff. That's a name to watch, folks. She's got a couple of AM wins this season. Brandy Buckaloo wins FA40. Allie Lawler holds off her closest competitor to win FA50. Angie Jones wins FA55. Janice Jones wins FA60. Donna Stanley, FA65. Patty Adams, FA70. And Judy Binns, FA75. Samantha Landers wins FA2. Abigail McDonald wins FA3. Ciara Adams wins FA4. And then we get to the juniors divisions. Kayla Hess wins the 15 and under division. MJ Gager wins the 12 and under. And Hayden Harper, friend of the show, wins the 10 and under division. So, Josh, we have some notes, especially on these younger players. What do we got?
Yeah, so Hayden Harper, first off, and it's important to note, she won by 34 strokes over her next closest competitor. Wasn't even close. This is her second major win. She won FJ08 at Worlds in 2022. She shot an 832 rated golf for the tournament. with all 4 rounds over 800 and an 870 rated round 2. Those numbers are like I'm in MA1 now, but I played MA2 last year, and like those numbers are decent for some guys in MA2. They are impressive numbers.
Oh yeah. I regularly shoot worse than 870 golf out
right?
of the course.
Like that's a great round. She played the same layout as FA4 and FA3 and would have won both divisions. Also played the same layout as FA2 and would have tied 9th in the 33-person division. And this is the craziest part. She's still only 9 years old and has FJ10 eligibility for all of 2024.
Oh my God. Get ready, folks, because she is just the current poster child for what we're going to see in 10 years. Like, we're going to have some players coming up who are amazing, who have all the skills, who have both sides, putting, all of it. It's going to be a completely different landscape in a decade.
Yeah. MJ Gager had her second major win, won FJ10 at Junior Worlds in 2021. That's in the FJ12 division. And then over in FJ15, Kayla Hess wins FJ15 by shooting 26 under and playing 918 rated golf.
Wow.
Just an impressive, and there's, I mean, a huge number of people there. Virginia Polkinghorn, for example, who won FA1. She was only 15 years old and could have been playing FJ15, but won FJ1 instead in the playoff. Just some very, very impressive numbers that highlight what we've talked about here of young players up and coming who are going to be the future of the sport.
Thank you to John Harper for sending this in, father of Hayden.
Yeah.
So that's very cool. Congratulations to all the champions. And really just seems like it was a great event. If you have thoughts, if you were there as a player or as a spectator, shoot them over to us, upshot@ultiworld.com. We'd love to hear how the event went from your perspective and what you thought of the different course layouts and all of that. But it's just quite a thing. I think, was this once again the largest U.S. women's tournament of the year of all time? I know it was pretty big last year. This year, let's see, there were 337 total players. Last year, there were 318 players. So getting bigger, slow and steady. Well, after being fast and swift, back to slow and steady. So congrats to all the champs. That's going to do it for this edition of the Upshot. We got a little weekend off coming up here, but USDGC and the Throw Pink Women's Disc Golf Championships right around the corner. Disc Golf Pro Tour Championship right after that. So some big tournaments and a lot of money on the line in the next couple of weeks. For Josh Mansfield, I'm Charlie Eisenhood saying so long, and we'll talk to you Thursday right here on the Upshot.